Hey, good morning, Duluth Vineyard. We are reading through Philippians chapter 1. I'm in verse 15 today, and Paul is in prison, and then he switches in this little paragraph, which I just find really fun. It's true that some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill. The latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former preach out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing they can stir up trouble for me while I'm in chains. Verse 18, but what does it matter? The most important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice. Paul is talking about how some people have impure motives. They aren't leading and they aren't doing ministry and preaching Christ out of just a desire to actually help the Apostle Paul and to see ministry really grow. Maybe it's some selfish motives. Maybe they want to be seen as leaders, and in doing so, they actually bring harm and even some shame maybe to Paul from false motives. And in verse 18, I love the way he says, but what does it matter? The important thing in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. And it makes me reflect on, and I did this past weekend, about how I'm not sure for any of us our motives are really ever pure. I don't think there's a human being that has pure motives 100%, or maybe even 80%, maybe 50% of the time. And when we discover our motives are impure, we can repent, we can turn, we can realign our lives with God, we can change and reorient. But when we begin to assume that other people's motives are pure enough, that can actually lead us down a pretty dark hole of being their arbiter, being their judge, putting ourselves in place of God to judge their motives. And it's actually not good for us. It's not good for our soul to go there. And so I love the way that Paul says, what does it matter? I'm happy that Christ is being preached, and I rejoice because of that. And then he goes on to say, I continue to rejoice, even in the hardship that he's facing. I wonder how during a very polarized political climate that we find ourselves in with all sorts of issues, we begin to judge one another's motives for bringing things up, for dialing things up. And I wonder how God might want us to put that judgment of motives aside and to actually invite him into those relationships and into our interactions, and to actually see Christ as the foundation of our lives in that. And so, God, would you give us your view of other people? Not so that we can be their judge, but so that we can be on level ground with them, standing before you. Would you allow us to see the deep love that you have for people, even and especially those who annoy us and those for whom we disagree? And would you give us the ability to see how we are the annoying folks for someone else? And then to extend grace in the midst of that. Have a great rest of your day.